First of all, good evening to all of you. Welcome. And it is a very special night. It's a special night, first of all, because we are starting a new cycle of learning Tanya. Some of you have already learned some lessons in Tanya before, some with me, some with others, some on their own. And And nonetheless, as you know, the book of Tanya is a book that is like the Torah, the written Torah, where it it is reviewed every year, and every year that you study it, you keep on finding new insights, new depth, and things that you didn't necessarily catch on to the last time that you learned it. And the same thing applies to the section of the Torah that deals with esoterics, deals with mystical aspects of the Torah, such as the books of Kabbalah, books of mysticism, and Hasidic teachings, which the book of Tanya is one of them. So that by itself is exciting. We're starting now. Second is the fact that tonight coincides with the yahrzeit, the anniversary of passing away of the first Lubavitcher Rebbe, who is the one that wrote the book of Tanya. So what better way to commemorate the yahrzeit of passing away, the occasion of passing away of a very special tzaddik in the history of Jewish people. And the best way is always to learn the teachings, the Torah teachings of that person. So here we are on the night of his yahrzeit, studying his book, Teachings of Tanya, and delving into the journey of the soul. And in addition to all of that, I also want to share with you some other exciting uh, tidbits about the journey of the soul. And that is that we have now started, and we're going to go through the book of Tanya about the journey of the soul, which talks about the origins of the soul, where it comes from, how it comes into the body, how it synchronizes with the body, with a person's mind and heart, and the challenges that a person may face during his lifetime or her lifetime in putting the body and the soul together. And it's what we generally call the journey of life. But as you know, the soul lives forever. So we have been working on, when we have successfully put together also a series of classes and lectures, which is going to be 6 classes. And the exact starting of date I'm going to announce to you. And that is going to be the journey of the soul, but not the beginning of the journey, but rather those 6 lectures will be dedicated to the soul leaving the body, passing on to the next world, the world to come, and reincarnation. So those 6 lectures will also be coming up in the next couple of weeks. Stay tuned through email and social media to know the exact starting date of that. And I think it will be quite exciting. We're going to also be exploring in those series of lectures many well-known topics, many well-known customs that the Jewish people have in regards to the passing of a soul, somebody passing away, in regards to burial, in regards to observance of yahrzeit and the year, and so on and so forth. Or the fact that, as you may have seen, sometimes we go to the cemetery and you see rocks that are put on top of some of the gravestones. There's little rocks and so on and so forth. So we're going to discuss all those customs, and we're also going to debunk some of the myth that goes around that people believe is true, but really has no foundation in Judaism. So it's going to be an exciting series, and more exciting than that stage of it will be the afterlife, what happens to the soul after it has made the transition from this world. And then we're going to be talking about the next stage of afterlife, which is reincarnation, and also the world to come. And when I say the world to come, I'm not talking about the Garden of Eden, so to say, where the souls go to after 120 years, but we're talking about the world to come in the long run when Mashiach comes. What happens to all the souls? So all of that will be coming up in those wonderful, exciting series. You're familiar with our JLI, Jewish Learning Institute series that we've been going on for quite a few years with courses. So we're going to be discussing a lot of fascinating stuff. All right, let's jump into tonight's class. So again, for those that joined us a little bit later, I have posted a link to the class so that you could go on our website and you could see the text that we're going to be learning, as well as a PDF file that I'm going to repost again, because if you joined late, you probably are not going to see it. Okay, so here we are. I have now posted it again for everyone, so you could download it if you want to follow along, or you may use your own book. Okay. So let's jump right in. This is the beginning of the book of Tanya. So the book of Tanya, as we said, deals with the journey of the soul. However, the Alter Rebbe, the first Lubavitcher Rebbe, has brilliantly put everything into an orderly fashion. And in order to question the whole idea of the journey of the soul and how a body functions, the Alter Rebbe, the first Lubavitcher Rebbe, sets up the topic and an abundant number of questions that it brings from all over about the soul. And once we have all these questions piled up, that's when the Alter Rebbe goes ahead to one by one unpack the mystery and answer the questions. Let's go to chapter 1. Matilda, I know you just joined us. Welcome. In the chat section of the Zoom, there is a document that you are able to download if you want to use the text, or you could just follow along while I'm teaching. Okay. Chapter number 1. Tanya Besuf Perek Gimel Denida Mashbiin Oso Tehi Tzadik Val Tehi Rosha. First, we start with an excerpt from the Talmud. There's many different tractates in the Talmud. Talmud is the total collection of all the halachic legal matters in Judaism. The Talmud discusses every law, questions every source, questions every contradiction to make sure that everything is precise in the Jewish law and that there's nothing that is baseless. That's the function of the Talmud. And by the way, it has become the basis of many Western civilizations and their legal system. So in the Talmud, when there's a special tractate, one volume that is dedicated to all matters that relate to women, everything that relates to them. And in there by itself, there is a law as far as family purity and going to the ritual bath, and when does a woman need to go to the mikveh. And in there, there's something fascinating that it says. It says that when a child is taking shape in the womb of the mother, and then there is a soul that is going to be assigned to that child, it says that prior to the soul coming down to this world to give life to that little baby, that there is a heavenly court that actually summons this soul and has a conversation with it. And the conversation is that they tell it, listen, buddy, you're going down to a physical world. Until now, you've been in the spiritual realms where there is absolute, open, pure godliness. And over there, things are going to be very different. So, what we want to make sure is that you give us a promise that you will be a righteous person and not a wicked person. And they continue. They say, not only we want you to be a righteous person and not a wicked person, but even if everybody else around you, everybody else in your community turns around and says, hey, you are such an amazing person, you are a righteous person. But nonetheless, you should consider yourself to be the opposite, a wicked person. So this is the content of this promise that the heavenly court asks a soul to swear by before the soul comes down to this world. So now the question becomes a major one. But Tzarich Lahavin, we have to understand, isn't it taught somewhere else in the Mishnah, which is part of the writings of the Code of Jewish Law? It actually precedes the Talmud. So in the Mishnah, it says, Ve'al tehi rasha b'pnei atzmecha, that you should never consider yourself to be a wicked person. So now we have an open contradiction. In the Talmud, it says that the heavenly court makes a new soul before it comes down to this world, promised that it will be a righteous person and not a wicked one. But even if people tell you you're righteous, consider yourself like a wicked one. And then we have a direct contradiction in the Mishnah that says you should never consider yourself to be a wicked person. So which one is correct? Why is there a contradiction in two different sources in Judaism? Not only that, the Alter Rebbe says there is a further question on this. Why doesn't the first thing make sense, what we read in the Talmud? Because what do you mean? They're telling the soul, consider yourself a wicked person. Now, if you would consider yourself like a wicked person, what would happen? Imagine you right now, imagine sitting wherever you are, if you went around all day and all night and telling yourself, I'm no good, I'm a bad person, I'm a bad Jew, I don't do this, I don't do that, I'm sure God doesn't like me, I'm really terrible. So what's going to happen? Obviously, what's going to happen is that a person is going to end up with sadness, with depression, and it's going to knock this person out, because which normal person, which healthy person, mentally, emotionally healthy person would walk around all day and all night and consider himself or herself a bad person, a wicked person, and not end up suffering from it? It's not good for the psyche of a person. So the Alter Rebbe says, not only there's a contradiction that doesn't make sense between two sources, but the first source that we quoted in the Tanya, in the Talmud makes no sense, because what do you mean? Why would I walk around and consider myself a bad person the whole time? It's going to get me depressed. And so what's wrong with being sad and depressed? Anything? Is there any rule? I mean, I don't think there is any rule in the United States against being sad or depressed. So you haven't broken any rules. So what's wrong with that? So the first Lubavitcher Rebbe continues and writes, because if you're sad or depressed, then you are not able to serve God with happiness and joy, which is an essential ingredient of what a Jew is. As a person, and surely as a Jew, when you have all these commandments that you're supposed to fulfill, you're supposed to do everything that the Torah says. If you don't have happiness and joy, not only it's against the will of God, because God wants you to be happy, but also it's not going to give you the energy, the stamina, and everything needed to be able to properly serve God. You're supposed to serve God with happiness. So the whole thing makes no sense. Why would I want to consider myself a bad person? So somebody might come and say, well, listen, some people don't care. Maybe it's not going to bother them. They're going to walk around. They're going to say, I'm no good, but they're not going to let it get to them. Yeah, but what happens if you don't let it get to you? An opposite and extreme thing is going to happen, because if a person is not going to end up becoming sad or depressed because of all of this, then a person might end up becoming very lightheaded towards godliness and spirituality and the Torah. In other words, once a person keeps on convincing himself or herself, I'm a bad person, I'm a bad Jew, oh, I'm far away from God, and so on and so forth, guess what? Then the next time an opportunity comes up to do a mitzvah, the person might say, listen, I'm no good anyhow. What? God is interested in me lighting Shabbat candles, so why should I do that? Forget it. I'm bad anyhow. Or God cares what I eat, or God cares this. So if it doesn't get a person depressed, but for sure what's going to do is going to make that person become very nonchalant and careless towards matters of godliness, spirituality, and all the responsibilities that we have in this life. So that doesn't make sense either. So now the Alter Rebbe, the first Lubavitcher Rebbe, starts unpacking this subject matter by bringing yet from another source in the Talmud. And he says, this matter can be better understood. In the Talmud, we find that there is a subject matter in the Talmud that talks about the different types of people that exist, that live. And the Talmud says there is 5 different categories of people. Who are these 5 different categories? Rasha v'tovlo, Rasha v'ralo u'beinuni. I'm sorry, Tzadik v'tovlo, Tzadik v'ralo, v'Rasha v'tovlo, v'Rasha v'ralo. So it says there is 5 categories of people. There are people that are righteous, that have it good. There are people that are righteous and have it bad. And there are people that are wicked that have it good. And there are people who are wicked, have it bad. And then there is another category, a 5th one, that the Talmud calls Beinuni. Beinuni. Beinuni in Hebrew means intermediate. So simply understood, when we learn that topic in the Talmud, it sounds like that there is righteous people, and initially the Talmud thinks that it's talking about their physical well-being. So you have a righteous person who has it good. In other words, he's very spiritual, is doing things the way God wants, and the guy also has a wonderful life. You know, he's or he or she are living in Marina del Rey and Venice near the beach. They've got their house, their yacht, their car. Life is fabulous. At least this is what initially the Talmud understands this whole thing. Then later we're going to delve into what mysticism has to say about this part of the Talmud. And as far as the righteous person that has it bad, is a righteous person, that means he's doing everything that God wants, fulfills all the commandments, but Nabach, unfortunately, this person is suffering, doesn't have money, always had hardships, is not feeling well. And I think we may, as you start thinking about people that you know in life and around you in family, friends, and community, you may even have some people that you say, yeah, this fellow fits exactly this category. And then the Talmud says there's the wicked person that has it good and wicked person that has it bad. Is referring to a person that is doing everything wrong in the book, everything that he's not supposed to be doing or she's not supposed to be doing, but has it good. Hey, money is there, financially, has all the fun in the world, and everything is wonderful in this person's life. Then there is the wicked person that has it bad. Some person that it always is doing everything wrong, and you know what? Also is broke and keeps on having problems in life. And when people look at this person, they say, "Yeah, listen, the guy deserves it. You know, he's been quiet. He's been ripping everybody else off, and he's been so nasty." So that's the initial understanding of the Talmud. And then there is the fifth category, which is Beinuni, an intermediate person. What that means, we're going to talk about it soon. So now the Alter Rebbe in the book of Tanya goes ahead to contemplate and understand this a little bit better, and says that when we're talking about these categories, we're not talking about their physical life, whether they have money, whether they have everything they need or not, as far as being good or bad, but rather we're talking about their spiritual life. In other words, when we're talking about the righteous, the category of righteous people that have it good, that means this is a group of people that on the spiritual side, they always have the decisions that need to be made in life through their good inclination. And the ones that have it bad is also talking about that spiritually they are lacking something. They're wonderful people, they're righteous people, but spiritually they're lacking something. Wicked people, the same thing. The ones that have it good is talking about wicked people that are doing everything wrong, but there's still some goodness left in them. The wicked people that have it bad is people that have no more good left in them. All their good inclination has almost disappeared. And then there is Beinunim, the intermediate category, which is the people that are somewhere in the middle. And we're going to be exploring that more. And by the way, just to give you a heads up, that most of the book of Tanya revolves around this mysterious character, the group that is called a Beinuni, an intermediate person. And we're going to try to figure out who exactly fits in that category, what are their unique characteristics, and what can this person accomplish in life. Because as we're going to learn more and more in the book of Tanya, we will see that this category of a Beinuni is a category that is easily achievable for most people, and therefore it is a wonderful target, so to say, that we could aim for to reach spiritually, to be like a Beinuni. What is a Beinuni? That's what we have to learn. So now, to shine some more light into all of this, the Alter Rebbe continues and says, Omar Rabba Kegon Ano Beinuni. So what happened was in the Talmud, it actually talks about this very topic and says that Rabbah, which was one of the foremost leaders of his generation, a giant of a spiritual leader, we're going back to about 2,000 years ago, he was sitting down to talk about exactly this topic of who is a Beinuni. So his students were sitting all around him, and they said, 1 second, Rebbe, time out. We understand what's a righteous person. We understand what is a wicked person, but we don't understand what's a Beinuni. Could you explain to us what a Beinuni, an intermediate person is, that is not a wicked person and not a righteous person? So Rabbah turns around and gives an answer to them and says, you know what? Why don't I show you by way of example? Then you'll understand it better. Somebody like me is a Beinuni, the category of an intermediate person. So Abaye, who was one of his foremost students, objects, says, Rebbe, I don't understand. How could you say that? You are the leader of the generation, the greatest sage of many generations, the holiest person that the entire Jewish nation knows and recognizes. How could you call yourself anything but a righteous person? You're very special. Why would you say you're an intermediate person? So, first of all, it makes no sense. Second of all, if you are going to call yourself an intermediate person, then you have taken away life from us. Why? Because obviously we, the rest of the people here, are not in your on your caliber, on your level. You're much higher. If you, with your very high caliber, are considering yourself only an intermediate person, an average person, then that means we are automatically considered to be like wicked people, people that go against God's will. And such people are considered to be lifeless. So you have just taken away life from us by bumping down your own level. So we have to understand this part of Talmud as well. What does it mean that the greatest leader, spiritual leader of that generation, which was much higher than our generation, would call himself an intermediate person? And to understand all of this in a much more clear manner, which we have to really get to the bottom of it, because we also know that there is another interesting writing in the book of prophets. There's the book of Job, right? I don't know if you remember Ayub. Ayub, Job translated into English, was someone who had lots of trials and tribulations. He lost his family members, he got sick, all his money, all his ships sank, everything. It's a fascinating book to read from the books of prophets. And he obviously stood steadfast, connected to God. And at a certain point, he has this conversation with God. And in that conversation, he turns around and he says, Ribono shel olam, master of the universe, creator of the entire world. Barata tzadikim, barata reshaim. You have created righteous people, you have created wicked people, and etc. He continues to pray. So we have a problem with that prayer, with that phrase. Why? Because it explains in the Talmud that before a soul comes down to this world, the destiny of that soul is announced. What does that mean? It is announced in the heavens above that where this soul is going to be born, into which body, and if this person is going to be tall, is going to be short, and what color hair, and what kind of professional career this person is going to have, and who this person is going to marry, and everything is announced in the heavens above. However, there's one thing that is not announced in the heavens above, and that is if this person is going to be a wicked person or a righteous person. Why? Because that is left up to a person's freedom of choice. God wanted every soul in a body to have a freedom of choice of how this life is going to turn out. So that is not established. So if that's the case, then why was Job in his prayer to God, and he was a holy man, and he's praying to God and he says, God, you have created wicked people, you have created righteous people. That makes no sense. That's the one thing that God doesn't set to begin with for a person. Leaves it up to the person to decide if this person is going to be righteous or, God forbid, the opposite. And not only that, we have to understand, try to figure out what this mystical and mysterious category of Beinuni, intermediate person, is. Because we all could relate to a righteous person. We could all relate to a wicked person. Does everything wrong, against godliness, against God. But what is an intermediate person? Someone in between. So what does that mean? So now we go through all the process of elimination. Let's understand, what could it be? What can't it be? Because surely the person that we call a Beinuni, intermediate person, cannot be somebody that is half mitzvahs, half good deeds, and half sins. Because if that was the case, then Rabbah, the whole story of Rabbah wouldn't make sense. Remember Rabbah, which was the leader of the generation, a very righteous person, and he called himself a Beinuni, an intermediate person. Now, Rabbah was definitely not someone who would have half sins. As a matter of fact, he was far from it. You want to know to what extent? Here is to what extent. That all his life, for a moment, he wouldn't stop learning Torah. Day and night, his mouth, his lips were moving, studying the various aspects of the Torah in depth. So much so that the angel of death had no power over him and couldn't take his soul away. Because as it's been taught and known, that anyone, while busy learning Torah, his soul or her soul cannot be taken away by angel of death. And he was one of those people that presented such a challenge to angel of death, and he had a hard time. Another famous person in Jewish history that gave a very hard time to the angel of death was actually King David. So what happened over there with King David was that while he was, of course, busy learning Torah day and night, the angel of death kept on coming and going, trying to figure out, okay, I need an opportunity to be able to take his soul away. But as long as he's busy studying Torah, no can do. So what happened? So one Shabbat afternoon, when King David was busy learning Torah, so the angel of death came and caused in the courtyard of the palace for some of the branches to rustle, to move, to make an unusual noise. King David heard the noise through the window and said, hey, this is abnormal. And he decided, let me go and check out what's going on. And still, he wasn't stopping from learning Torah. So even though he was walking, he was by heart repeating the Torah that he was learning. And then as he was going down the steps, then there was one step that was a little bit loose. So when he stepped on it, suddenly he lost his control and he got startled as he lost his control and he stopped learning Torah. And it was at that moment that his soul was taken away from him. So the person we're talking about, Rabbah, was someone of that caliber, like King David. The angel of death had a very hard time finding an opportunity to take his soul away. So it's impossible for such a person to have committed half of his life sins and going against God. So, and if he called himself a Beinuni, an intermediate person, then the definition of Beinuni cannot be someone who is full of half sins and half mitzvahs. So, what else could be the meaning of this Beinuni, the category? What type of person? So you may say, you know what, maybe Beinuni is a person that generally is doing mitzvahs all the time, good things, only during the moment that maybe he falls through and he is doing something wrong. So during that period of time, he is considered to be a Beinuni. Maybe his label changes. So the Tanya says that that cannot be either. Why? Because we see clearly in the Talmud, it brings down that if somebody conducts himself or herself in a proper manner spiritually, but then for a moment or two or an hour, whatever it is, unfortunately, that person is doing something wrong against the Torah, is committing a sin. For that period of time, this person is considered to be a Rasha, a wicked person. So again, not a Beinuni. So the question remains, what is a Beinuni? Who is a Beinuni? So you may say, okay, you know what? Maybe it's this person who does mitzvahs all the time, but suddenly fell through, committed a sin, but then repented and had remorse. So maybe now this person is considered to be a Beinuni. So again, the Tanya continues and says that cannot be the case either, because once the person repents, this person is considered to be a proper righteous person. Again, skipping the level of a Beinuni, whatever that is. So we have no idea who fits into that category. So then a suggestion might be, as Tanya continues, that maybe we're talking about a person that he himself or she herself never commits any sins. Everything is perfect. The only thing is that is observing somebody else committing a sin and doesn't go ahead to stop that person from committing a sin, right? So let's say you are a righteous person, you do everything that God expects from you, but you are now watching a person kidnap another person, stealing another person. Well, so maybe such a person suddenly is considered to be a Beinuni, demoted from a righteous person to be an intermediate person. So again, the Tanya says, no, no, no. Because if you have an opportunity, if this person has an opportunity to stop a bad thing from happening and he doesn't intervene, then again, he's considered to be a Rasha, a wicked person, because you should have stopped that kidnapping from happening. And how much more so if somebody has an opportunity to fulfill a mitzvah, but doesn't take the proper step to make it happen, then that person also is not considered a Beinoni, because for that moment, he has missed the opportunity. For example, like somebody who has an opportunity to learn Torah and instead decides, hey, I know I could learn Torah right now, but I think I'm going to go try my luck in Vegas. So again, missed opportunity. This person cannot be called a Beinuni, an intermediate person. So comes out that this level of Beinuni, which we still don't know what it is and who this Beinuni is, but one thing we know for sure, this Beinuni must be a very lofty, spiritually high level person, because he doesn't have sins, he doesn't waste time from learning Torah. If he has an opportunity to do a mitzvah, he does it. If he has opportunity to stop somebody else from a mistake and doing something wrong, he steps in. So like, wow, this is great. This is a very high spiritual level. And it almost sounds like a regular righteous person. So what is the difference? What's going on here? So what is the definition of a Beinuni, of an intermediate person? It sure sounds to me like a completely righteous person. So there is also, the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya, that let's be clear here. When we're talking about understanding the terminology of a righteous person, an average person, and so on and so forth, many times I'm sure you sit with friends or with family and they tell you, you know what? You are an amazing person. You are a tzaddik. You are a righteous person. Why? Because they know you or they heard you did something special. So now they're giving you that title of a tzaddik, of a righteous person. Many people do that to me. Rabbi, you're a tzaddik. We saw what you did. You did this, you did that. But let's understand that those types of titles, although they mean well, they are just exactly that. They are nicknames that are given. They don't truly represent the spiritual level of a person because, hey, generally people don't know the spiritual level of another person. So they want to tell you you're doing a good job. They want to tell you they're looking up to you, that they appreciate you. So they say you're a tzaddik, you're a righteous person. So that's as far as nicknames, that's as far as the general identity of a person, if a person is generally known to be good. But the true spiritual level of a righteous person is one that has never committed any sin. It's a very lofty level. So we don't want to get mixed up with those kinds of slang that people talk about. We're trying to get down to the bottom of truly what is the definition of a Beinoni. And there's also talks about when in the afterlife, when a soul passes away and comes to the heavenly court and gets judged. And in different writings, it talks about how a soul may end up being called uh, a tzaddik, a righteous person, or a wicked person, or an intermediate person. But when we're talking about that chapter in Kabbalah and mysticism, that's only talking about the rewards of a person. In other words, in heavenly court, after 120 years, when a soul is judged and they say, well, listen, we see that more than half of your life, you did good things. You were busy collecting mitzvahs. So let's say 51%. And 49% of your time, you were so-so. So you know what? We are weighing these two. So the mitzvahs are more than your wrongdoings. Therefore, we're declaring you to be a tzaddik, a righteous person. But that's only as far as the rewards of a person, the spiritual rewards that a soul is supposed to receive. That's how it's judged. You know, they try to weigh the balance of the good versus bad that a person did. But that doesn't reflect on the true identity and the true spiritual standing of a soul while it's down here in this world. So that is what we're trying to figure out, that while living in this world, what is a tzaddik, what is a rasha, and more importantly, what is this Beinoni? Because the true level of a tzaddik is really something very, very lofty. And so it says in the Talmud and explained in the books of Kabbalah that as far as the true title of a righteous person, it is a level where the righteous person in the Talmud, it says that his good inclination gives the final decision at all times. In other words, people have inner struggles. People are always faced with choices that are right and choices that are wrong. And a person has to make a decision. Which way am I going to go? Which one am I going to do? So the Talmud says that a righteous person is the one that at all times, his good inclination is the one that is victorious over the evil inclination. And whatever the decision of the good inclination is, that's what takes place. So a tzaddik, a righteous person, is driven by the suggestion of the good inclination. And why is that? Because there is a certain level of a tzaddik that has reached such a high level where doesn't even have any evil inclination left in him or her anymore. It's completely gone. This person is purely driven by his godly spiritual inclination. We have an example of that, which is King David. So, King David had a very tumultuous life in many different ways. The challenges that he faced from childhood, and once he was chosen to be a son-in-law of the first king of the Jewish people, eventually he became the next king of the Jewish people because of his merits. Along the way, there was some falling, some mistakes that he made, and then he repented. He had remorse for the mistakes that he had made, and he really climbed the way back spiritually towards God. And it says that he achieved such a level where he was able to completely get rid of his inner evil inclination. And that's why in the book of Psalms, in the book of Tehillim, in one of his writings, he writes, "V'libi chalal bekirbi," that my heart is hollow within me. What was he referring to? That in his heart, he no longer has the evil inclination that usually lurks in it for most people and has desires that are against the will of God. How did he accomplish it? He accomplished it by fasting. He was able to fast enough times to completely eradicate his evil inclination. In the olden days, when people had a different physical stamina, they were able to withstand fasting for many, many days, one after the other. These days, fasting is no longer the recommended method of feeling closer to God, of repenting, of doing teshuvah. Sure, we have our fast days on the calendar, the most famous of which are Yom Kippur, first of all. Most importantly, Yom Kippur. Everybody knows Yom Kippur. And the most famous one after that is Tisha B'Av, the day of fasting for the destruction of the temple. However, an old practice in mysticism and Kabbalah, which used to be in order to purify yourself and lift yourself up to a high spiritual level, to fast for many days, those practices are no longer in place these days. Because our sages have said that in the last some generations, our bodies have literally weakened, have changed. Our physiques are no longer, and our physiology is no longer what it used to be 2,000 years ago. So therefore, they recommend against using the method of fasting for spiritual height and spiritual cleansing, other than the days that was established on the calendar for the public to fast for a special occasion, such as Yom Kippur and the destruction of the temple. So the level of righteous also has many different categories within it. But overall, truly righteous people, again, not the likes of those that are complimented by the public. Oh, you're a tzaddik, you're a righteous person, you're a holy man, we understand those are all niceties that people use in talking to each other. But true level of a tzaddik, of a righteous person, are very few and far in between in every generation. And that's why it says in the book of Psalms that it says, "V'tzadik yesod olam," that a tzaddik, a righteous person, is the foundation of the world. In other words, amongst tzaddikim, righteous people, there's very few that reach the very top height and singular in every generation as a leader of that generation. And it says that when God wanted to assign souls to every generation, realizing that there are not that many people that can reach that ultimate level of a tzaddik, of a righteous person, the very, very high spiritual, mystical level. So therefore, God went ahead and actually assigned, planned it out, that which souls will be in which generation, in order to make sure that every generation is able to benefit from having a few of these righteous souls, so that they could be the leaders of that generation, so that they could be guiding that generation. So we see that it's a very unique level. So I see now, based on the time, I think it's best that we pause here and then open up for some questions. So far, let me just sum up what we have learned today, and then tell you where we're going to be heading next week. So, what we learned today was about the beginning of the journey of the soul, that before it even comes down to this world, it's already being charged with a task, so that it could fulfill that task. And they make it promise to be a righteous person and not a wicked person. And that actually set off a series of questions for us. So what do you mean that they make it swear and they tell it to consider itself a wicked person, but then somewhere else we say you shouldn't be a wicked person? And what does righteous and wicked mean anyhow? And then we learned from the Talmud that there is two categories of righteous, two categories of wicked, and then one category which is called intermediate, and yet we're baffled. We still don't fully understand what that category is. So with all of these questions, but at the same time, we're getting familiar with what has been written about souls in different places. What we're going to start learning next week, to start unpacking this more and get deeper into it, we're going to jump into the writings of the Holy Arizal, who lived about 500 years ago. He was one of the foremost Kabbalists of the generations. And in his writings, he writes about the soul, and how a person actually has not one soul but two souls in each one of us, which is a fascinating topic to cover. And of course, we're going to become eager to know what is the difference between these souls, why is there two, what are their functions, and so on and so forth. So all of that is going to be coming up next week, and that's the beginning of us getting our feet wet in understanding the souls. All right. Any questions that I could answer? And if yes, please unmute yourself so that you could ask the questions.
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
I was just wondering, you mentioned that in King David's time, reaching a high spiritual level was by fasting. It's not recommended today. Is there something in its place, or it's just not recommended today? I mean, is there anything else in its place that we do?
Yeah,
instead
great
of fasting?
question. Yeah, great question. So in these later generations, when fasting is not only helpful, but actually it could be detrimental. And that's one of the reasons why the sages said that we shouldn't practice fasting anymore, because a person, actually, as we know, we experience, even with one day of fasting, by the time Yom Kippur is finished, we could barely make a move with our feet or with our body. And when you feel so weak, then you can't even really concentrate on anything you're doing, much less serve God properly, to do the mitzvahs, to pray properly, to have proper concentration, to be happy. Why? Because our body no longer has the stamina to withstand multiple days of fasting. But instead, the sages tell us, what was the purpose of fasting to begin with? When it was possible to do it. The whole idea was for you to be able to concentrate on your spiritual aspect of life rather than physical. You deprive yourself from the eating so that you remind yourself, I'm not all about physicality. I have a soul, spirituality. So that's where I have to spend some time contemplating God. So therefore, the sages tell us that proper teshuvah these days should be with dedicating time to strengthening your spirituality, to learn Torah, to make a self accounting of yourself, of your day, of what transpired, and so on and so forth, so that you, through this, you will be able to bring yourself closer to godliness and to a higher spiritual level, which is the entire idea of teshuvah, loosely translated as repentance in English. But in Hebrew, really, teshuvah means returning. When you return, your soul returns to its source. In other words, it's climbing up higher spiritually, which is towards its source. That is the phenomena of teshuvah, of repenting. So, and you could combine with that proper prayer, proper learning, uh, proper doing of mitzvahs, increasing the mitzvahs that you do, pick a new mitzvah, giving some charity. All of those forms together are the current way of teshuvah rather than non-stop fasting, one after the other.
Thanks.
Sure. Pleasure.
Rabbi, I have a question, if I may, if there is time.
Sure. Of course.
So thank you for this lecture and for the insights. And you focused a lot on this Beinuni category.
Right.
My question is, and I will give a short answer, and I hope that you will correct me from what I just understood from you. What is the purpose of having this Beinuni? What was God's purpose of putting this Beinuni among all of the other four categories? Was it because God wanted us to always have the goal of reaching this spiritually, so that it's not something that is not achievable for all of us, that we all should be saints and was that the reason, or is there another purpose or something about the Beinuni that is unclear?
So fabulous question. It's your question actually is going to take us some time to reach that question in the chapters. More specifically, in the book of Tanya, in chapters 26 and 27 is when it's going to be dedicated to answering this exact question. That's the entire chapter 27 to answer this question. So we're not going to go to the details now, but what you summarized is exactly correct, which is there is a very deep purpose for this category of Beinoni. There is something that God wants out of this category that the other one, even the higher category of righteous people, cannot accomplish. It's very fascinating as we're going to learn more clearly about the difference between these categories. Because you would imagine that righteous, there can't be anything higher than that. So, that must be that must be God's favorite, right? Top of the line, the righteous people. It comes out actually, while that is true, they're very special and they're very spiritually capable and so on and so forth. And yes, they are loved by God, but there is some unique stuff that only the Beinuni could accomplish and not a tzaddik. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Rabbi Danny, can you hear me?
Yes, Bucky, go ahead.
So if our destiny is written, and we have free will, so how does the free will?
How does free will go hand in hand with the fact that our destiny has been set?
Yes, Yes,
Okay,
Rabbi.
fabulous question. And so the answer to that is a twofold. That first of all, there are certain aspects of life that are destined by God. And sometimes you even see examples of that. I'm sure you have come across scenarios where you try as hard as you can to get something done, to get something accomplished. And no matter what you do, it looks like, you put your hands up and say, okay, God has his own plans. I don't know. I tried. For 3 days, I'm trying to get this accomplished. And no matter what I do, it just doesn't go. There must be some other forces, right?
Right.
So there are certain things that God wants it to happen this way. Having said that, Jewish people are in control of their mazel. What does that mean? It's true that there is a destiny that has been written. Let me take a step back and give you an example. Whenever a movie is made, usually when a movie is made, there is scripts that have been written for the actors and the actresses, and they're given here. This is what you're going to be reading. Even the anchor people in the news, right? The reporters, they all have a text that they're reading from. They have a teleprompter that the text is there and they read from it. Having said that, there is nothing that could hold back the news anchor from going off script and making their own comment or adding their own sentences. Or in the movie, an actor or actress might go ahead and suddenly say lines that wasn't fed to them. Why? Because they actually could do it. They have the control. Now it's true, going back to our topic, that God sets the destiny for souls. And we learn that not everything, some matters. But having said that, even when a destiny is set for a person, so let's say a person's destiny was that this person is not going to be having a lot of money, is going to be financially not well off. That destiny can be changed by the person, even though it was written as a script for this soul. Why is that? Because the soul of a person comes from the root, and we're going to learn more about this next week, comes from a very high level, a level that supersedes the destiny of a person, where the destiny is coming from. And therefore, a soul in a body actually can change the destiny. And here is something interesting that most people may not know, because we always, obviously, good occasions, we go ahead and wish people what? What's the famous thing that we tell people when they have a good occasion?
Mazel tov.
Mazel tov, mazel tov. So what does mazel tov mean? So mazel tov is loosely translated as congratulations. Or it's translated as, oh, the guy has good mazel, right? What does it mean the guy has good mazel? People think it means the guy has good luck, okay? Which luck, what does luck mean? Luck means something that is not in your control. It's something from the heavens above, and it has nothing to do with you, and it's a matter of luck. The guy has good luck. However, that is not the real meaning of mazel tov. Mazel, the word mazal, comes from the word nozel, which means flowing. And why is that? Because we have a source for everything that comes down to this world for us in our life. We have a source where all the blessings flow from spiritually to come and become part of our physical life. So when you wish somebody a mazel tov, what you're really saying to them, it should be a good flow. In other words, may the spiritual power from its source that could come down to you, let it flow to you properly. So every time you wish somebody a mazel tov, you're actually wishing them to have a new channel of blessings. So it's not luck, it's not locked up what has been written for us, but rather uh, we, together with our souls in a body, have the capability to actually stop a flow or start a flow or make a flow quicker. How? By the way we behave spiritually. So when a person is doing spiritually something special, something unique, or even something that he or she is supposed to do, that causes this flow. It's like a faucet, it opens it up. And through that, a person is able to change completely the original destiny that was set for that person. So even if, God forbid, for somebody it was destined that this person is going to be whatever, is going to have a short life, during that time, this person, by virtue of how she or he does things in life and the choices with freedom of choice that this person makes, this person could actually completely change the flow that was supposed to happen. So that is how destiny, the original destiny as written for a soul, in addition and in combination with a person's freedom of choice, works. We have the power to change. So Mazel Tov, now you learned something new.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Pleasure. Any
Rabbi
other
Danny,
questions?
I
Yeah,
have a question.
sure.
First of all, I'm really excited that you're teaching Tanya. I've wanted to learn it for a really long time. And like Mina Shamayim, it worked out that we have this class and I can listen on and watch on. So thank you, first of
Pleasure.
all. And I'm really glad you're teaching it. And I wanted to say, like in terms of the soul, like the soul of a non-Jew versus a Jew, do they have the same sort of like order, I guess, in the way that you described?
So we're going to learn all about it. Every human being has a soul, and the mission of every soul is different. And that's why every soul is unique. And that's why every soul has a special value in God's eyes. And that's why nobody should think, what does God care? I believe in God. I know God created us. We all created, but whatever. There's 7 billion people on the planet and I'm one. It's like, God cares? The answer is yes, because what you could accomplish and the mission that has been attached to your soul, nobody else could accomplish. And you are actually part of a huge team and a part of the big puzzle. Without you, the picture will not be complete, which is the reason why when it talks about the times of Mashiach, it says that one of the things that needs to happen in order for the era of Mashiach to come, for Mashiach to arrive, is that all the souls need to be brought down to this world. All the souls that have been waiting, they need to be coming to this world first. Why? Because each one has been assigned a certain mission, a certain accomplishment, a certain refinement that he's supposed or she is supposed to enact in this world. And until all the souls come down to this world and each one fulfills their unique capability and the unique mission, the picture is not complete, even if it's taking multiple generations for this to happen. but we are going to be learning about all of those nuances and differences as the chapters unfold.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Pleasure. Pleasure. Okay. Any other questions?
Rabbi Danny, is there going to be a Zohar on Sundays now?
Yes,
Going forward?
we are back on track. Our Sunday morning 10 a.m. Zohar and Kabbalah class, which was on and off for a few weeks because I was attending a special training session. But we are now starting this coming Sunday. We are back on track.
Oh, thank you.
Pleasure. Okay. Any questions? Yes, Beth.
Oh, I was just going to say thank you so much, Rabbi. This is wonderful.
Pleasure, pleasure. I know you were with us for learning it one round, but again, I myself, every time I learn any part of Torah, and surely when we're talking with the book of Tanya, I see new depth, new dots that get connected for me. So I'm hoping that everybody else has the same experience.
I know this is great. And because I know a little bit about it, I don't have to concentrate on that. Like I can look at the other parts a little bit.
Right.
But it's not quite as hard. So yeah, thank you.
Pleasure.
Rabbi Danny, I don't know if this question relates to the lesson tonight, but what can we do for somebody that passed away when it's close to it's coming, the outside coming up? Is there something special we can do, especially now? Or
yes, as you get closer to a person's yahrzeit, and again, this is very befitting the question that you're asking, because tonight is the yahrzeit, the anniversary of passing away of the first Lubavitcher Rebbe who wrote the book of Tanya. And in general, what we do for anybody's yahrzeit is that for that period of time, as we approach it, and surely on the day of the yahrzeit, we try to increase in 3 different areas. One, learning Torah, any part of Torah, anything Torah subject matter that perhaps you like to study, you enjoy, and so on and so forth. So that's what you put some time into. In prayers, that you dedicate some time to prayers during that day. And the third thing is giving charity. And that is also for the sake of that soul. Now, of course, on an occasion like tonight, when it's the yahrzeit of a very well-known and holy person, if you have writings of that person available, you try to learn what that person actually has taught and has written, which is what we're doing tonight, the book of Tanya. The reason why we do those things, Torah, prayer, and giving charity, is because on the day of the yahrzeit, the soul has an opportunity to be re-examined again, and all the accomplishments of that soul are recounted again. And then based on that, the soul gets to be elevated even higher spiritually in Gan Eden. So why we do this on the yahrzeit, say Kaddish and learning and Torah and charity, is because all of these things will be to the credit of that soul at a time that this soul really needs it, the day where this soul's files are being reviewed and everything is being recalculated. So we do all of that, and with that, the soul gets a boost. Learning Torah, prayer, and giving charity.
Thank you.
By the way, you may have joined a little bit later tonight in the beginning of the evening, or maybe you were here. I announced that as part of the series of the Journey of the Soul, very soon, and I'm going to be emailing everybody about when it's going to be, we're going to have a 6-week series once a week about that aspect of the soul. When the soul passes away, the burial, the afterlife, reincarnation, what we could do for the soul, all of that is going to be included in those lectures.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Rabbi, I have a question. How are you? It's Matilda.
Baruch Hashem, Matilda. How are you doing?
I'm doing just fine. Getting lonely here, being stuck in the house.
Well, now you're part of the family online.
I know. I love it. I love it. It's good.
Yeah.
And I appreciate all your classes. You are, in fact, the best teacher. I do have a question. When you mentioned that when Moshiach comes and the souls will be returned to earth because they've been waiting, are they the souls of the departed you're talking about that have been up in heaven?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
That the souls, exactly the same souls, will be coming back in a physical body. And it will be a sight to behold. I mean, just imagine, all our loved ones will be back.
Rabbi Danny, when you say physical body, so when somebody was very, very old, that person comes back in that old, frail body, or is that a younger, more healthier body that he left? I mean, or he used to have?
Yeah, we're probably going to have a lot of plastic surgeons lined up and ready to. So no, so first of all, it will be going in stages, and Matilda, I'm going to come back to you because I don't know if you finished asking all your questions. So when a person comes back initially is going to be coming back the same, but then all the magical stuff is going to happen. So in other words, look at all the different interesting scenarios. God forbid somebody had a loved one, as we know, many that lost a parent at a very young age, right? So imagine the parent, somebody lost the mother at age 35, right? The mother was 35 years old, and here it was this little kid. The kid grew, and the kid now lives. When Mashiach comes, the kid is still alive, or the kid became 90 years old and then passed away, and then Mashiach comes. And in the beginning, what's going to be is here's a kid that is 90 years old, and suddenly there will be a 35-year-old mother and they're going to be reunited. So it's going to be a definitely fascinating setup. However, there's a lot of stages to the coming of Mashiach. So we're going to be discussing all of that. Yes, Matilda. So was there some other questions that you wanted me to address?
No, that was the only question. I do want you to give Sonia a big hug and kiss for me, and all the kids, everyone. I hope, God willing, is well. That's the important.
Yeah, thank God, everyone is doing well. Thank you for always thinking about them, and yeah, let us all be well, and all of this will be over very soon. I saw in the news that they say Israel is leading the world in vaccination, and they're approaching the 20% mark of the population to be vaccinated. And they have announced that they are hoping, they believe that by Passover time, they will have the entire nation vaccinated.
Wow.
Which will be amazing.
Wow.
No, well, and I don't agree, Rabbi, because people need to research and do the homework what's inside those vaccinations.
Well, I'm sure there will be some
scary.
people that will not be taking the vaccination.
Not if somebody would have to kill me first before I touch that vaccination. People, no, it's actually seriously, it's very scary.
Yeah, listen.
Yeah, God forbid. But people need to do their homework before everybody's so excited for this vaccination. There's a lot of toxic poison things and other things in there.
Everybody has to do their own decision because everybody has a unique life, unique level of health, body, medical, and so on and so forth. And yes, some people are more careful about one thing or the other. Some people are more allergic. So it is definitely a very personal choice. All I could tell you is that so far, at least from all the halachic authorities and rabbinic authorities, they have given permission to people that if they make the choice to take the vaccine, they are allowed to. So that's not taking away the freedom of choice from people, but from a Torah perspective, the rabbinical authorities are saying that thumbs up, as far as the vaccine.
Yeah, there's more to it that's gonna come out. So people need to do Be very careful.
Well, put it this
Yes,
way.
I wanted to add, Rabbi, I wanted to add that my neighbor across the street from me is the nursing supervisor at County USC.
Mhm.
And I saw her the other day because I haven't seen her. She's only working 7 days a week or 8 days a week.
Wow.
And she told me that a lot of the nurses are calling in sick from stress. And I asked her, I said, well, have you had your vaccine yet? She says, no, no way. She says, I'm not going to have it. And in fact, she told me that over 50% of the nurses at County USC have refused to take the vaccine. That is scary.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So when somebody has a following and they're going to promote the vaccine, I'm going to say something
Yeah.
contrary.
No, again, it will definitely be a personal choice. Look,
God.
we don't know what everybody's setup is. You know, some people may have to weigh for example, God forbid, there may be some people that if they end up in the hospital, or if they get COVID, will be detrimental to them. There may be some other side effects that they're thinking from this vaccination, but again, people will make personal choice based on that. Listen, do I want this? Do I want that? And yeah, like any other medicine, I don't think there's any medicine in the world that doesn't have side effects. But people make choices, okay?
Yeah, and it's not even proven to work.
Yeah. Well, look,
and it's not going to change anything.
Definitely
So,
beyond the scope of this class. So we're not
yeah,
going
I know.
Well, not really, Rabbi, because
because it changes your DNA.
Yeah, well, if people get sick from COVID, their soul is going to be in line to come back down here.
Thank you,
Well,
Rabbi.
apparently the microchip which is not conspiracy, which is it's an mRNA, which is the first time in the
Oh
world
my
that
God.
This is beyond the
it changes your soul.
I'm not an authority to
Well, I am.
So let's stick to the topic of the soul and our learning tonight.
Rabbi, I have two questions.
Excellent program, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Parvana, I cannot hear you. You got to unmute yourself. Parvana, unmute yourself. Just press the microphone at the bottom left of the screen.
Okay, I did it. I said thank you so much. Thank you.
Pleasure.
It was wonderful, wonderful. It was good to know these things. Very good. And it made a lot of sense to me.
There's a lot of more exciting things coming up. So God willing, next week we're going to continue.
Thank you.
Rabbi Danny, thank you so much. Is it too much to ask? Maybe we can do this twice a week. I know you're very busy, but I think everybody agreed that it's very fun to listen to you and learn so much.
Not too much to ask, but the answer is once a week. We're going to stick to once a week.
Good answer.
I appreciate the enthusiasm. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Shabbat shalom.
Thank you, Rabbi.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Take care.
I still have questions.
Yes. I'm here for questions. No problem.
Two questions. One is it a mitzvah to go to the burial site of a deceased person? And the second one is, how could a person be a Beinoni if we're either going up spiritually or going down spiritually? Like there's no stagnation.
The second question, with your permission, we will unpack and answer in future weeks when we have more information about a Beinoni. We still need to learn more about the identity of Beinoni, and then we'll be able to go into the details. As far as whether it's a mitzvah to go to visit the gravesite of a person, it is not part of the 613 commandments. The question is that nonetheless, even if it's not one of the mitzvahs, does it have a spiritual benefit? I'm being the word police here now, because you said, is it a mitzvah? So sometimes people use the word mitzvah as a good thing, as a good deed, and sometimes people use the word mitzvah as one of the commandments that God has given. So no, we don't, as one of the 613 commandments, it doesn't say thou shalt go to visit the gravesite of a righteous person. That's not. However, it does have spiritual benefits for sometimes the person that is buried there and for the person that is visiting, because there is, as we're going to learn in the future lectures, that there is a change that happens spiritually when you go to pray at a gravesite or to go, read the book of Tehillim, and so on and so forth. So in that sense, yes, there is a spiritual benefit. If you want to call a spiritual benefit a mitzvah, I think what you mean is a good thing. It's a good thing. Having said that, there is, and again, as we're going to be learning in the future lectures, there are times when we're actually not supposed to go to the gravesite. There are certain days on the Jewish calendar that are not suitable for visiting a gravesite in general every year. And then besides that, there is some customs attached to the first year of somebody passing away as to when during the first year are you allowed to go and visit the gravesite. So we're going to cover those as well. But overall, it has spiritual benefit both for the person visiting the gravesite as well as the soul of the person that is buried there when a visitation happens.
Thank you, Rabbi. That was very informative.
Sure. Pleasure.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.